I'll sip away at this.
Well, if you're under the weather, don't feel compelled.
I'll nurse it, and myself. Thanks. We'll nurse each other.
Okay, so in general, what I wanted to talk about, the general thrust of the conversation is just your style in general. And
Sure.
Because I didn't want to go too in depth on the specific films for people who maybe haven't seen them, but I also wanted to not overlap with like the really good DVD commentaries you've provided, or like the specific film, like the essays in the 3 collections I have.
Okay.
Are all very, very well written as far as analysis. So I was hoping
That's
that
good,
maybe
thanks.
we could speak for more generally.
Yeah, I have no recollection of the essays or of the director's commentary,
Well,
so
as you said, you
I may
don't
repeat
listen-
myself quite a bit.
Yeah.
Try not to, but I might.
I noticed that the New York Times, when they were covering Keyhole, they had an interview with you where you were talking about like being pigeonholed as kind of unclassifiable, and how
Yeah.
you thought that was a good thing, but meanwhile you found out from an industrial end that that's not a good thing. I was wondering if you could expand on why people tend to have that perception from your point of view with regard to style, I guess.
Yeah, I guess when people see that my movies are thrown together with such primitive glee, or maybe it's primitive lugubriousness,
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever it is, there's something primitive about it. I think, well, I'm the same way. When I watch a movie, you try to fit it into a category, and then go from there. You maybe correct the category as you go, but your first impulse is to categorize. And maybe when you see things put together without any regard for continuity, put together with a really aggressive disregard for the various acting styles matching up, maybe, I think a lot of people want to jam me into the camp category, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, but then, I don't know. I don't even know what camp is.
Well,
I'm not saying I'm not camp, but I just don't even exactly know how to define it myself. I kind of got comfortable with the idea that I'm melodramatic because I've figured out a working definition of melodrama, and it seems to apply to almost everything now.
Yeah.
So I'm that, but that's like saying I make films almost, and then like everything except, and maybe even including surveillance camera films are melodrama.
Oh, yeah.
Like the more you watch a surveillance camera, the more you want some melodrama to happen.
Well, also the gestures are heightened, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're seeing people as they are, like in that heightened sense of.
Oh, like
just behavior.
during a robbery.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah, well, that's one of the definitions I use for melodrama, is just where the characters are uninhibited.
Yeah.
To fit a very long story into 90 minutes,
Yeah.
everything has to be uninhibited. Everything has to be plain to the eye. And of course, we're uninhibited when we're dreaming or insane or sleepless or in a state of, I guess I've never included like the committing of a crime.
Yeah.
But I guess you get pretty uninhibited there. You're doing things you ought to be doing. but
Yeah.
You're doing them.
And it's interesting that you mentioned camp, because it's like it's also something that has a debatable definition. But it
Yeah.
also seems to me like a lot of films that qualify for the camp designation are kind of films that have like a story that kind of fades to the background to allow for a very charismatic lead to kind of just like chew through the scenery.
Yeah.
In that kind of like.
I don't know if I've ever really had that.
No, but like I think
Yeah.
that like when you work with very charismatic leads, and I think you always have, even if some are less stars than others, then it kind of allows them to emote in a way that is visible and also melodramatic, right?
A lot of times I just erred on the side of melodrama because I wasn't sure, being an inexperienced storyteller, still 25 years after picking up a camera, sometimes I just err on the side of overtelling the story, and then to the point where but paradoxically where the story disappears as well. I don't know, both over signifying things facially or bodily, and then, but I'm also trying to tell too many stories to the point where they kind of all cancel each other out, and
I don't know about
end up
that.
with well, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out what people make of my movies. I know one of the feelings about camp that most people probably have is that you laugh more at it than with it.
Yes.
But I've been such a laughter slut that I've always been happy to take either kind of laughter. At first, people were well aware I was in the audience because I'd introduce a movie at a film festival, and they'd be scared to laugh at the movie out of politeness to me, or just uncertainty. You kind of have to feel certain to laugh, unless it's a nervous laugh or something, which those are my favorite kind. So it's strange. The first few movies I made, no one was quite certain if I wanted people to laugh or not, and so. But you'd think, after I'd made 10 features, that going back and showing an old movie, say, that people would know better now. But I recently revived my first feature, Tales from the Gimli Hospital, with a new score. I played it at the Lincoln Center in New York, and it was just right back to 1988 again. It was unbelievable. There were like never more than 2 people laugh. It's not that funny a movie, I admit it, and my comedic timing in it is terrible. But I don't know. There's just never been 2 people laughing at the same place in that movie. But there's plenty of sort of a general itchy condescension sort of rankling through the room sometimes too. Luckily, with the live music elements, it sort of classes up the joint quite a bit, even when one of my movies is projected across all these melodies. So. It gave the feeling of a really beautiful concert that just happened to have one of my movies projected in behind it.
Now, the laughter, could it also, like, I think what you're saying about camp is true in the sense that it's always like a reclaimed, like, reading of something, right? Like, or where you take the object and you reclaim it through an alternative reading, which sometimes is laughing at it. But it also, it's not so much judgmental even when you're laughing at something for purposes that are unintended. It's almost like you're laughing with it. And I think that one thing I found interesting, you wrote an article on Bollywood where you talked about a kind of naivete in the viewing practices then where I guess it deals with realism, like things could be heightened and maybe less realistic, but audiences would be willing to go with it. They weren't so, I guess, nailing it to the cross of realism, right? Yeah.
I can't remember. I remember regretting writing that article. Wish I hadn't. Because I was writing, I think was it a review on
it went into
Deepa Mehta? I'm not a film reviewer, and I shouldn't be writing about living filmmakers.
I think it was very
because she's, I hope so. But I remember realizing, what am I doing? I sort of got into this writing bit as a dabbling little hobby, and I was writing about my favorite films by dead filmmakers. Next thing I know, I was writing about someone who was like sort of moving around in the same circles as me, and not what I wanted to be doing. So I never did that again.